6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris. I'm Chris, she's Anna, and that's right. We bring the episode and the show to you directly by ourselves, sponsored by no one. How you doing, Anna?
I am doing pretty good, thanks, Chris. How are you?
Not too bad. Keeping busy for the most part.
I am very happy the snow is starting to melt in Vancouver. I know it's maybe different if you have kids. I don't know if Baby Force was really enjoying the snow.
She enjoyed her 2 snow days for certain.
Oh, yeah. There you go. I have teacher friends who really enjoyed those too. But, yeah, I do not. Vancouver does not do well with the snow. So no. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I was commenting to some of my coworkers how I much prefer our temperate winters. I appreciate the novelty of the snow. However, do not like to have to deal with it within the context of Metro Vancouver for a variety of reasons. But there was an article on CBC or CBC.com is where I read it, but they had talked about like, why is snow in Vancouver such a big deal? Like, why is it such a problem? And, you look at the statistics, simply put, it snows every year. Like, that's not something like, the belief that, it very rarely happens. Comparative to many other parts of Canada, that may be true, but snow does occur. And when it snows, it's usually a pretty big event. Like that's quite often the thing. Mm-hmm. But in the way back times, the powers that be tried to use the temperate sort of mild winter climate as a draw to get people from the east. And in turn, how it was sort of posited is that should it snow, it comes in fast and it gets washed away faster when it turns to rain, which can be true.
Sure.
Sometimes. But because of this, the entire sort of, complex of how the metropolis or, different cities of Metro Vancouver have come to be are built around the idea of why do we need to spend money to worry about it when we know the rain will come and solve it for us and the rain don't cost us a thing.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, honestly. And it's just like, obviously last year, 2022, December 2022, we had pretty bad snow for an extended period of time. And like within my time living in Vancouver, we've had at least one, snowstorm a year, even if it's only a couple days of snow. And every time it's just like the buses don't know what to do.
Well, it's that they know what to do. The problem is that they are not equipped to do it.
Yeah, and they certainly can't get up that hill to UBC. They can't get down a straight road half the time in the snow. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what I always find funny is that the collective, and I might include myself, and maybe you're part of it as well, but the collective will look at this like we knew it was coming. Yet we did nothing, or we weren't prepared, or we don't have the equipment or facility, what have you. But then a good portion of that collective would also be the first to say, well, I don't want to spend any more money, or I don't think it's worthwhile. I'm not suggesting you and I are in that camp.
Yeah.
But therein lay the issue is that, people will complain about our ability to handle the snow, but like the money is on, don't worry about it. The rain is coming and the rain is free. Like I had to go into the office once while snow was on the ground. This was on Friday. The complicating factor was that from Thursday to Friday, we did have a little bit of freezing rain out where I live, which made some of the areas particularly slick. But what was interesting is I had the choice. Do I drive into Vancouver or do I take the bus? And I'm like, I'm going to take the bus. So I go to walk up to the sidewalk and I'm walking essentially on ice and snow. Like no one has really shoveled sidewalks, or if they did it like that one time. And despite it snowing since, they've not done it again. I get to street corners where the plows have come by and have piled up the snow. So I'm climbing over like a ridge that I have to like stumble across while traffic's flying, right? Then the bus stop that I catch my bus on, there are 3 lanes of traffic. The bus takes up the curb lane and there's 2 more. They've plowed the 2 furthest lanes, not the lane where the bus is. So the bus is blocking the middle lane and I'm having to traverse the snow to get to like, and you know, when you think about it, if I'm taking transit and that's what you're encouraged to do, it's not particularly easy. And
No.
I would argue that most people would also say, well, I shouldn't have to pay for that. You're the user of transit. You should. Well, hey, I'll get on the road and beat traffic. Like this is the
Well, yeah. Also,
catch-22.
I don't want to start into this philosophical argument about what society is, but that's kind of what taxes are. You pay for services you might not need, because that's what society is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is frustrating, and I decided I don't have a car, and I was not, trying my luck with Evo, so I haven't driven in a couple weeks, and it'll probably be another few days before I trust the road users and the roads. It's mainly parking, honestly. It's like because the size
parking stuff.
of the road, aren't plowed. So yeah.
But, it's sort of on the topic of taxes and paying into the social good, there's part of a social contract. Speaking of contracts, Jimmy Rutherford signed a new one. I
wondered how you were going to do it, and that was honestly so impressive. I tip my hat to you.
I was talking to someone who commented that, more often or not, my segues hit the mark. There are others that are weak as F, but that a good number of them do. And they're like, do you practice? And I'm like, I don't. It's just sort of like, there's a little like light bulb that like comes on. Okay, here's how I'm going to go and transition based on what we're talking about to something new. And they're like, oh yeah, because you do it really well. I'm like, well, thank you. It's the one thing that I do well on this podcast.
Oh, no. But it is impressive. But yes, Jim Rutherford does get a new contract, so.
Petey hasn't.
Petey does not. That's where we're at in the balance of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, we're jaded. That's the other thing.
Yeah. I just think it's worth thinking about. Like, we get called out for being too negative, and a lot of the time in the past, I think we've been justifiably cynical, but maybe it's time for us to be not just sarcastically on the bandwagon, but actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a fair point because, the Vancouver Canucks continue to do Vancouver Canuck things, which in the modern era means get points one way, shape, or form, and do so in a fashion that can cause you to swear, or in my case, occasionally curse. What we'll do, though, is we'll dive into the week that was in Rewind. Did you catch any of that early game on the Monday? Like, I know you had to actually work, but did you maybe have some earbuds in to listen to some lo-fi Vancouver Canucks broadcast?
Yeah, I did get a lot of the radio call. But yes, I was at work and people kept talking to me. How rude, interrupting the Canucks game. But yeah, that is the case when it will be a 10 a.m. game on a Monday due to the holiday in the US. Yeah, it was a strange, to go off the rails immediately was a very strange weekend of hockey broadcast, just because it was like they put all 32 teams were playing on the Saturday, which coincided with most of the NFL games, I understand.
Well, not most. They were supposed to have been split sort of half and half. But yeah, it's playoff times in the NFL, so they play Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah. And then there was 2 games on Sunday, something like that. But yeah, it was a strange game. Canucks obviously felt the same because they looked like they were treading water a little bit out there, but then again, it is game 7 of a 7-game road trip, so somewhat excusable.
I didn't see a whole lot of the game because, again, this thing called work got in the way. But what little I did watch, at least at the start, before I essentially watched the culmination of the game as I was having my lunch break, the Vancouver Canucks started well. But it was quite clear that they had maybe a period of hockey left. And unfortunately, that period was the first period. The Vancouver Canucks did come out. They were playing as they had been all road trip. They take themselves a 2-1 lead into the intermission. Whether it was a combination of whatever the heck went on in the Columbus, dressing room over the course of that break, or the Vancouver Canucks were truly just gassed. And at that point, looking at the clock and wondering if they'd be able to, get on into Vancouver before the sun actually set. Because again, the game was that early that conceivably there was a possibility that would occur. The Blue Jackets got a game's worth of shots in the second period. That's generally not a good thing when you want to win games, to give up 25 in a period. Yet Casey DeSmith stood on his head. Like, Columbus only got a goal out of those 25.
Yeah, the score sheet does not tell a story for Casey DeSmith's game. Like, I thought he did decently well, but everyone was clearly gassed, and overall not a concerning picture to even though Columbus is Columbus, and you want to win those games, they found a way to get a point. Looking back at the balance of the road trip, you're still pretty happy with it.
Mm-hmm. The overtime experience was not what I'm accustomed to from Vancouver. But again, I think this has to do with the fact that they're tired.
Yeah, I mean, imagine playing overtime. It's such a quick game, or it should be, but yeah. When you're absolutely gassed, you only have 1 period left and you're on your 4th period of hockey, that day, so. And
then the shootout was blah. But this is actually a question for you, Anna. We haven't seen a lot of shootout hockey for the Vancouver Canucks as of late. But thinking back sort of the course of the past few seasons when we have you noticed that the Vancouver Canucks don't score so many goals and rely on their goaltender to make a lot of saves? And it has me wondering, is this an NHL thing where now that the shootout is so prevalent that teams are much more prepared, goaltenders are much more prepared as to who's going to be shooting and are better able to stop that? Because in the early days, you were getting goals left, right, and center. Now it's in this particular case, 4 shooters apiece, and the Canucks got 0.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's easy to say, back in my day, there was more scoring in shootouts. But, yeah, I've noticed that too. Obviously, goaltenders are getting better. Obviously, that's the case. But also players are getting more skilled, so you wouldn't think that it's necessarily true that we're getting fewer goals, but anecdotally, that seems to be the case. I find it frustrating because I'm one of the few people that does actually love shootouts. I think they should be rare, but I enjoy them when they happen. But even looking at the pick of the shooters, I just think, don't you want PD out first, as your first shooter? And do you think that Piers Suter is your best option? As a
when Suter came out, I was shocked. I would have thought it would have been Besser. If Besser hasn't come out in the top 3, he's coming out number 4, right? Seeing Suter come out was definitely interesting, but seeing Kuzmenko come out as the first shooter, I thought was interesting. I mean, I'm not knocking the kid's skill, but typically coaches don't trot out the players.
Great. Yeah.
No, right? That's what I was going to say. The coaches don't trot out the players that they've been benching on the reg. And I wouldn't say that he had a particularly good game, to have then been rewarded with the opportunity to have a shootout. I'm not saying he had a bad game. I don't recall him being present in what little I saw, which to some, that's actually a good thing, but regardless, the Vancouver Canucks pull a loser point out of Columbus and, give up the 2. But hey, if you think back over the course of this road trip, right, they pulled out points in 6 of 7 games.
Yeah.
That opening loss to the Blues was it. And then even then, it was a game that the Vancouver Canucks almost stole a point from. So very successful road trip. That brings them home. They get to take on the Arizona Coyotes on Thursday. Prior to the game, we learned that Connor Guyland is of the opinion you don't name any lines that aren't the first line. And to Connor, I say, boo, let us have fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll pick this up.
I don't like these reasonable takes from the likes of Connor Guyland.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of wanted to talk about this later. So maybe I'll save my opinion for later on, but yeah, just don't ask hockey players to do anything fun. They're not going to do it. But yeah, it was the Pride game on Thursday. I was there with the Last Shaders, as was friend of the show, Mio, who we mentioned
I
last
saw a
week.
picture of the two of you together.
Yes, we finally did meet up. There was a lot of messaging back and forth trying to find some time. But yeah, I'm really glad we got to meet. That was very cool. And it was cool to be there on Pride Night, even if, a warm-up jersey-less Pride Night is still, it's still a cool experience.
Hey, Finn was into the celebration of Pride. That was the Canucks contribution.
Yeah.
Actually,
It's just
something that I'm curious about. If it's players not being forced to wear jerseys, what have you, and then there was the big issue about the tape that they finally came to their senses about. Why is it that the advertisements on the boards throughout the rink can be Pride? Like, how is it that was not like, and I'm not trying to say take it away, and maybe I shouldn't mention it because the NHL is like, oh my goodness, we shouldn't allow for that. Because in a million years, why would they think that way? But like, how is that okay, but like tape on a stick originally wasn't? When it was a player who elected to do so. Like, that's the part that just blows my mind. And again, I think it's just the NHL trying to find that perfect spot on the fence leaning to the wrong side that they can sit on.
Yeah, 100%. And because it's not player, something that the players have to do as a collective and not participating would stand out. It's their prerogative to say, especially if it's to do with corporate pride, which they seem to be a fan of. Yeah, they're happy to do that. It was cool to see most of the Canucks players. A lot of the Canucks players use pride tape on their sticks and warm up as well. That looked real neat.
But to the game itself, this was not a good game. If you're like, I feel bad saying this. Like the Vancouver Canucks won 2-1. At no point in time did I feel that the Vancouver Canucks were going to lose. But when you hold a team to 4 shots in the first period, yet still find a way to give up a goal, at least it was to Travis Dermott. Shout out to Travis.
Pride King.
Right? Like, I feel that the Vancouver Canucks are showing signs of weakness that will allow much better teams to take advantage of them when they get into sort of crunch time, whether it be close to the end of the season or into, obviously, the postseason. Defensively, the Vancouver Canucks are starting to come down to earth a little bit. And there is some concern, but they still won. Dakota Joshua getting his 12th. Kid's trying to play himself up to the first line. I'd name his line, but you're not supposed to.
It's quite a goal. Yeah.
Oh, it was. He looks like, to me, he's got like the outline of a power forward in him.
Yeah, because he's big, he's physical, but he's not clumsy, he's not purely physical. He has skill too, and he works really well with his line mates. So yeah, I think he's great value. Yeah, like you say, it was not good hockey, but it was a fun game. Nonetheless, like, just having the Canucks have a bit of spark. There was definitely some goon moments from Arizona.
Well, Lafferty was out there making friends.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what he was doing. He was just being nice, making friends. Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to the Leafs game, but, like, some of the officiating, like, the fact, who was that, O'Brien, just getting, like, a minor for just basically assaulting someone. Yeah, whatever, but it was a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the point, though, in the season where the NHL officials start to throw the whistles into the back pocket to let the players determine the course of the game, which unfortunately does mean that stuff like that goes by without really any concern, which, again, if I were to sort of jump over the fact the Vancouver Canucks beat the Arizona Coyotes 2-1, got themselves a dub to right the ship, the Maple Leafs show up for Hockey Day in Canada. And as that game progressed, it was quite clear that either Vancouver had a reputation or the referees were really wanting to get some bonus hockey out of the game. Like, I'm not one for conspiracies, but I could not for the life of me figure out how the referees were calling the game as they were. I'm going to sort of jump to the third period where Tyler Myers gets a penalty, rightfully so, near the end of the game, but that he gets a double minor having to go and dance with, I know it was Tavares was one of his dance partners, and I can't remember who the other one was. But like in my mind, if you were talking about game management, that's an even up. Like the fact that Toronto gets to have two dance partners and only one penalty, to me, it doesn't seem quite right. But that again is sort of how that game progressed.
Yeah. I am just like, especially as like Piasuda, like comparison, O'Brien getting a like single minor and then Piasuda got a double minor.
A double against Toronto. Yeah.
Oh, roughing? I don't even know, but like that was insane.
Suter got a double minor for roughing, and Yarncroc or whatever you'd say, he got a roughing and a cross checking. But yeah, PS gets the extra 2 for roughing. When again, how that sort of works out. Like if the way you're going to call against Myers takes place, in my mind, it should have been the other way here. Mm-hmm. Morgan Riley, that's who got the 2 minutes. It was Morgan Riley and Tavares. But let's get ourselves to that point. Vancouver Canucks come out hot. And, you know, you and I, we've been sort of called out in C4 Discord that we're giving the Leafs too much credit and maybe the Canucks not enough. And I think the Vancouver Canucks, they must listen to the show, as we know. They come out hot. Hoglander gets 2. Garland gets 1. Like, again, the line with no name, scoring all the points. And the route is on going into the first intermission. In fact, the route is going on so significantly that the panel talks about whether or not the Vancouver Canucks are Stanley Cup favorites.
Yeah. I did miss the first intermission, so I missed that fun talk. But yeah, like it did seem to be a tale of two halves, and then you got the last period was something else entirely. But it's just like it's the old Canucks habits, right, of letting their foot off the gas. Mm-hmm. And yes, there were a couple of goals that you would think Demko should have, and these were the shots he was saving late in the third, so let's still give him a ton of credit. He still stole the game in a way, but
yeah,
that second period was not a good look for him or the Canucks.
Yeah, I think the Nylander goal, the first Nylander goal, I think was the one that he was screened on. I believe Myers was the one in front of him.
Yes.
The McCabe goal,
Tyler Myers.
McCabe goal, I believe, is the one that he probably should have had. And in the second Nylander goal, I think was the.
I thought.
Well, that was the one that was tipped, was it not? Like he was expecting it low, and
yeah,
I think Susie might have been on the ice. I'd have to go and look.
Yeah, it was Susie
like there was
tipped,
the tip, right?
Yeah,
like I will agree. Maybe could have gotten in a way if he had sort of better set up for the shot, but of those three, I think it's fair to say one of them he needs to stop. And I think so long as the season has gone on, that's what's happened. Again, not to worry. Garland goes and gets one to settle things down near the end of the period after the timeout was called. Like, you're up 3-0 going into the first intermission, and not even midway through the second period, your coach is calling timeout because the game's tied 3-3. Not a good look. Also, whether it's a good look or not, the Go Leafs Go was just next level in the Raj.
Yeah. It was a feisty one, and it did feel like the crowds were sort of battling for control, and that it does happen quite a lot in Canucks Leafs games, but that felt like it added to part of the excitement for me, that as the Canucks fought their way back into the game, the Canucks fans kind of overpowered the Leafs fans as well. Yeah, it definitely felt funny to me. Anyone that follows me on Twitter will have seen my complaint about this already, but this is a huge game. It's Hockey Day in Canada. It's not Hockey Night in Canada game, but Leafs are in town. That's a huge game. Canucks are top of the league. I know it's only mid-season, but having then the bar you're in just switch to the NFL playoff game instead, it's just okay, I get it. From the bar's point of view, they're just catering to their audience.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think sometimes you have to lead the town a bit, and if you put on the show, people will tune in,
I think you're right, and I think part of why you see a bar change the channel is sort of connected to how you and I still look at the Vancouver Canucks and have doubts. Whether we should or we shouldn't, we do. And I'm going to go back to the first intermission panel where they asked about whether or not Vancouver should be the Stanley Cup favorite. And BX is like, hey, this is a good team, top of the league right now. They're having fun. Are they going to win the Stanley Cup? I think it's better to pump the brakes. Let this team enjoy it. It's fun hockey. It's the way hockey should be played. Like he said, many of the same things Luongo had said. But let's not put all the pressure on this team because, one, they don't need it, and two, it's not fair. They're a season removed from being a crap team. And here they are, where they are. I wonder, though, if the Vancouver Canucks will at any point this season sort of get that respect. And maybe it's good that they don't.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy. We kind of talked about this before with comments about us being arrogant or whatever. I'm kind of fine if no one likes us. I'm kind of fine if no one respects us and no one thinks we're gonna get anywhere. That's is a better place to be to surprise people, right? But I also think BX is right. Luongo's right. Hockey's fun again, and that's a great thing. We don't need to get ahead of ourselves and start wondering. But I do think there is a difference between us being cynical fans when we're the ones paying attention, as to the casual fans who are the ones that go to that make Vancouver a really fun place to be when Canucks are in the playoffs. You need those bandwagon fans, you really do. But sometimes you need to say, it needs to be the only show in town a bit, and you need to kind of get people excited ahead of time. I don't know. I just like, it's so fun to be in Vancouver when the Canucks are in the playoffs. Like, I've only done it once. I wasn't here in 2011. I left after game 2 or 3 of the Chicago
It was
series,
an interesting time. Interesting couple of months.
Yeah.
So the Vancouver Canucks, they do win 6-4. Exciting game for certain. The Toronto Maple Leafs got themselves 3/4 of a game of shots, both in the second and the third period, with 18 and 19 respectively. The Vancouver Canucks, on the other hand, they had 6 shots in the second, and I think 4 of them must have come within the first 2 minutes when they actually still looked like they were in control. This being before the Leafs scored their first goal. In the third period, the 6 shots that they got on net, 2 of which came on special teams, because Miller and Petey both got goals in the power play. The problem is, while on the power play, they also gave up a goal to Mitch Marner. I again point out that the Vancouver Canucks, whether it's maybe that they're tired or they're falling into bad habits or they're finally becoming the team that we'd sort of expect them to be, I do not know. But it was definitely an interesting game. And during that sort of final 4 or 5 minutes, when Toronto essentially had the puck in the Vancouver end, save for the few times the Canucks iced it, was a little disconcerting. Getting the 6-on-4 power play with the empty net, disconcerting. Tyler Myers, as you put in the notes, going feral, maybe not so disconcerting, but then getting the roughing against John Tavares, who came to dance with him. Like they were doing some square dancing, little do-si-do, little promenade on home type stuff. And Tyler gets the roughing there, having already gotten an interference penalty against Morgan Riley, who comes and then gets involved. There are 2 Maple Leafs and the Canucks somehow gets the extra one. I do not know. Don't get it. The Quinn Hughes cross-check. The referee standing right there watching it go down does nothing. The referee up the ice is the one who throws the arm up. I have to ask, what was it that referee watching it, and you watch the replay, his eyes are there. It's not like he was looking elsewhere or his attention was drawn. What is it that he thought happens there that somehow the guy on the, blue line, if that, sees differently, blows? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the officiating. It didn't make sense to me. To me, the Piasuda double minor is the most egregious out of everything. We just want consistency, but just using that to talk about Tyler Myers in general, as Tyler Myers, his size. There are good things and bad things about Tyler Myers' size, and one of them is that mistakes he makes are really obvious, and that also counts for referees, and sometimes that he does get penalties for being too tall. You do see that happening, and maybe that was the more optics penalties that he got there. But also there's good points to it too, and he's finally using his wingspan for good, his powers for good instead of evil. And the amount of poke checks he's managing in the last couple of games is really impressive. And Zadorov's using his physicality really well in not just hitting players, but chasing down players and using his size really well. So I really hope Tyler Myers continues to use his powers for good and not evil, completely blocking your goalie's sightlines, as he did do as well.
So Vancouver gets themselves some points, sets themselves up for a good week at home, leading into the All-Star break. You got the Chicago Blackhawks coming to town. Unfortunately, future Vancouver Canuck Connor Bernard will not be present as he is nursing a broken jaw, I think it is. I would have to think again, without Connor, the Blackhawks are not a good team. And
Toothless?
You could say that again. So that's 2 points. The Blues come to town, and I don't like the Blues. I hope the Vancouver Canucks get 2 points there, especially if Bennington's in net. And then Columbus shows up on Saturday, and I have to think it's another 2 points. Like, this is, to me, a 6-point week. If I'm being cynical, I would love to give them 7. I mean, again, I'm getting called out here. I'm taking it personal. But no, like, you look at this week, it's got to be a 6-point week. Well, it doesn't have to be a 6-point week. It should be a 6-point week.
Like, you know what? Like, I agree with you, and there's no part of me that this is saying this because we got called out for being too cynical. And by the way, just to say, like, I think it's justifiably called out. I think
I disagree.
Innate says cynicism, but like, we've been banned before. That's a lot of it. But we haven't seen a season like this in a long time. This is not the bubble Canucks. This is not a team that got lucky in right place, right time. Had a good run.
Yeah, you're right. Not the bubble Canucks. They weren't a good team before the season resumed. Like, the bubble is where they were good. So even then, I think our cynicism would have been still valid. I think, you know, when I look, though, at the Vancouver, I'll make a call here on the Toronto Maple Leafs. When I was looking at the Leafs as a team, I saw their wins. I'm like, okay, not bad. I didn't look at the points that they're getting from the loser points, which are losses in my mind. 2, the amount of Leafs news that gets funneled towards me, whether I want it or not, is just obscene. And so I think there was this belief in the back of my mind that the Leafs were actually a really good team. They're not. In fact, when they were showing how they had leads in how many games? Was it 5? And had lost all of them? I'm like, oh, that's not a good team. I felt much shame. So yes, fair enough. I got called out on that. But yeah, this is 6-point week for the Vancouver Canucks.
And for sure. And let's be clear, maybe if Canucks had not started 3 goals to the good, but Leafs had started 3 goals to good, maybe they would have had a much easier time of things. But you're right, like, there's also part of it that was like Canucks not performing on the big stage in Toronto when they were really rolling at that point too. Mm-hmm. It did feel like that was the perfect moment. So maybe that was part of why we were resting as well.
Yeah. Oh, well, something to chew on until we come back next week to talk about the week that was. But before all of that, we're going to take ourselves a short break. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? Because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, Anna. When Jim Rutherford was brought in to Vancouver, did he not say that he viewed himself as being in a position sort of as a caretaker to help sort of elevate others around and in turn, set this team up for success and then sort of go not on his merry way, but sort of, stage left? So am I wrong to remember this? Like, is that not something that occurred?
I don't know if he was exactly saying that, but I think there was definitely a reluctance to commit to the Canucks project. I mean, just recently that he was talking about major surgery. Well, that was going to be another question I wanted to ask you. But he's here for 3 more years, having been extended. The major surgery, a year away from now, or a year back, sorry, he said this team needs major surgery. If there was major surgery, I would be genuinely curious what it was. Like, is his idea of major surgery wisdom tooth removal? I mean, that could be major surgery. I got put right out.
They pulled all four. I also think they beat the living daylights out of me when they did it when I was out. But again, I don't know what major surgery has occurred under his watch. I want to give him credit. Like, we've talked about this over the course of many shows now. Like, they've done a good job at figuring out different pieces that work within this coach's system. But I feel like, understand the re-up, right? Because you want stability, and there's really nothing that suggests that he hasn't done his job to this point. I wonder if we're feeding into the fact that, wow, they're good. Yay! The window's open. Let's go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's valid. I do think it's more of a, like, this is my project, this is my team now, taking ownership. Maybe not a good word, but over it, and the partnership between him and Patrick Allvin, I do think is really important. I will say that I do think OEL buyout, like, obviously it's like not ideal to get another buyout.
Well, it wasn't a Rutherford. Like, this is the thing. Like, he was having to clean up the mess of the predecessor's handiwork. Off the rails, but still somewhat on the rails. There was an article in the Georgia Straight that said we should thank Jim Benning for how successful the Canucks are right now, because it is his players that he brought in that have the team where they are today. And I do believe that our author wrote that article genuinely.
Right. So it's definitely the Georgia Straight and not the Onion or the Beaverton.
So definitely the Georgia Straight, not the Onion.
Yeah, like, let's not, we could keep it to a thank you, Jim, I guess, but really that's just such a stretch, especially when you realize how wrong the drafting process could have gone. Yes, it was great to get Quinn Hughes and Pettersson where they were, but, like, really there was maybe it could have gone a lot more sideways if Benning had been more in control. Anyway,
Mike Yissinger.
I do think it's important.
16th of January. That's who wrote that article.
Okay.
And I mean, he ends off the article. 2 years ago, Benning promised a winner. 13 months after his firing, which many in this famously negative market will still argue is justified on every level, it's looking like we might owe him a parade. And if that parade is this June, only 3 words will do things justice. Holy shiznit. Again, I'm just reading this. I guess we owe Jim a thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Benning.
Don't trust people whose last name is Kissinger. That's my first.
Not Kissinger. It's like Usinger or something like that.
Oh, Usinger. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, like, that's just an insane take just to, like, the core piece that's just barely holding on.
I want if anyone's listening, please read this article. You can find it. Like, I've given you a snapshot, but it just, yeah. Like, to me then, okay, cool. So what we should always do is whenever a team were to win the Stanley Cup, make sure to thank their predecessor, who likely filled the cupboard with pieces after a very dark period of time. Like, the number, if we have to say, 2 years ago he said they were going to win. I think we talked about this on the show. Every year Benning said they were 2 years away. You know what? You say it enough times, eventually the calendar will work out in your favor.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. I derailed us. Back on topic. No. Jim Rutherford, he's back. I don't even know what we were talking about before I so rudely interrupted you.
I don't know. Jim Rutherford. Yeah. It's good. I think stability is good. Yeah, I mean, honestly, sorry, just the Jim Benning thing is wild to me because it's just like if we want to transition out of contract into no contract, the reason we are where we are with Pettersson is because of Jim Benning and wasting his prime years. Like that's where we are. I do think that it is worrying where we are with Pettersson, but I also think there's little we can do, and when I say we, I mean as fans, but also like the Canucks. All I've got to do is, all they can do really is play well, right? Like they don't have it. You can't really demonstrate the future of the team during the season. Like they can invest for the cup run. But like that's what you have to do. Like you're definitely not going to get anywhere by calling him out publicly about worrying about his contract. Like either he's holding off because he's uncertain or he's holding off because he wants a better paycheck and he wants to have the best possible case for that. And either way, like all you can do is give the team the best chance at the cup this year because this is the time. If there ever was a time, it is this time. It is when Pettersson is at this point in his career and when the team is playing as well as they are.
The comparable that's being thrown out right now, simply because of their recency, is Nylander's new deal, where $92 million over the course of 8 years. Things kick off next season. I think it's like 11.5 per. Do you think that's enough? If he wants to remain a Canuck, do you think that's enough? It's a little bit less than the $11 billion or whatever it was that Friedman posited a few months back. But I'm kind of thinking it's not.
I think, yeah, I think that's valid. Like, I think the number begins with 12.
It's a $500,000. They can do it. You know, shake out the Aquilini family couches on $500,000 worth of loonies will fall out.
Maybe child support for a little bit, and then you can find the money.
The problem that I foresee with PD is I genuinely don't think it's a money problem. I feel it's more, does the player want to be here, whether it be the direction as to which the team is going. Obviously, this season helps. You would mention that. But then some of the things that have been sort of shared don't lend strength to PD wanting to really stick around unless it's really worth his while. And that's the concerning part for me. Like if the Vancouver Canucks were to not have PD back in the fold, and again, he's a restricted free agent. So theoretically, he is still a Canuck and has no ability to be anywhere else. It's not to suggest he can't sort of exert pressure, make something happen, nor could another team come in and make something happen too. But if the Canucks were to, heaven forbid, lose him, who fills those shoes? Like you don't get that type of player on the free agent market. Or if you do, you're getting yourself locked into an Eriksson deal. And again, I'm not trying to say Eriksson was PD caliber, despite anything Jim Benning might have thought.
Yeah.
That's the part I think that scares me, is that we've reached this point, and the best player the Vancouver Canucks have had in a long, long time could find themselves going elsewhere. Yeah. Ugh, so worried. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't help that the media continues to ask the question and wonder why the heck hasn't he re-signed. This was so confusing. I think Friedman actually said that. It makes no sense to me. Oh, God. This is a guy who's like an insider and he's confused? Mm-hmm. Ugh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alvin saying that in the press, I don't think as well during his buyback interview wasn't great.
Yeah, Alvin though, Alvin's an interesting interview. I mean, so is Jim Rutherford, right? Like, hey Jim, you haven't re-upped Bruce yet.
A bit.
Well, he's not. I thought he was re-upped. Oh gosh.
Yeah, that was bad. But in general, he's more wily. I think it's valid.
Interesting things come out is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I think it is valid to be concerned about PD. And I think you're right to be, worried that it's just like him not wanting to play in this market. I mean, the stories when you hear about like him being worried about the noise around it, to me, what that says is his agent trying to like scare the Canucks into not bothering him. I don't think PD is genuinely concerned about the noise around his new contract. I think he just wants to see where this is going, and so wants the Canucks to just leave him alone whilst he figures out the project. He's played in this Canadian market long enough to. I don't
think the market scares him.
No, and I don't think, it genuinely is putting him off, the Canucks talking to him. I just think he's like, I haven't made my decision, so just leave me alone. So to me, I'm just trying to not think about it too much, because all you can do is hope that the Canucks make some good investments before the trade deadline, and that the secondary scoring is given a little boost, and then we win the cup, and then PD wants to stay here forever.
Fair play. We're going to stay here forever too, because we have another segment to get to. We're just going to take a short break before we do.
He liked to say the F word.
Oh, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't. You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
The no-name line. What the F? What the F, Anna? I like how you actually put that no-name trademark in the rundown. That's what we should call them now. The no-name line.
Yeah. So I think it's one of the line names that I've seen bandied about. I did not come up with it, but I did enjoy. I think this someone came up with it actually before the Connor Garland quote where he said that they shouldn't have a name. Just like, as I tweeted at the time, don't ask hockey players to participate in anything fun. They're not going to be part of it. But it's like, guess what, Connor? It isn't about you. It may be about you, but it's not about you. It is not for you. You are a player. You do not create the culture of the team. The team the fans create the culture of the team responding to the players. So, if, Canucks fans want to give your line a nickname, it's valid for you to say, oh, we're a third line, we shouldn't have one. But that doesn't matter one bit. Bruce, there it is, may have been, directed at Bruce Boudreau, but when he said he didn't like it, tough, Bruce, is not about you. It's about the fans having fun. I think friend of the show, Sam Chan, came up with No Frills line. Dakota Joshua did do an Instagram post where he called them, is it chicken and ribs? I tweeted this and I've now forgotten, but yeah.
Chicken
maybe
and
that's
ribs?
something.
That must be an internal thing. Where
it
Willie
totally
Mitchell
is.
was
But I'm just
was called dill pickle or something like that.
Yeah, chicken ribs. But I'm just I'm guessing Connor Garland's the chicken in that scenario, but who knows?
I feel that when players don't want to embrace the fun, it actually creates more of a problem. Like you have to consider there's going to be a segment of fans who will hear your words, who will immediately go after those who, in their opinion, are ignoring them. 2, those who are, for fun, the ones who come up with the names, the lines, and it just catches on. They're now going to sort of amplify their effort because you're not the boss of me. And those two, opposing sides then create an energy that give this life. But the fact that, a third line shouldn't get a name is interesting in my mind because here in Vancouver, we name lines for the sake of the lines getting names. When Henrik and Daniel got partnered with Jason King, they were not the Vancouver Canucks first line. And I'm pretty confident that the players didn't get together and say, hey guys, what should we call ourselves? Because no one would come up with the mattress line and call themselves that. But us fans, we were like, Twins and a King, mattress line, right? Like that's how this goes. I just feel that you're right. The code gets in the way, or the belief that there's a right way of doing things just takes away the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Every line should get a name. If it sticks together and it has success, needs a name.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like, I think that, like, we've talked about, like, hockey culture in general, and this is probably the least damaging effect of hockey culture, but it is damaging. It's a limiting effect of hockey culture, is their whole team first mentality. No one, like, we haven't won anything yet. Like, we can't even say we're playing good hockey. We haven't won anything yet. And it's like, all right, okay, but, like, it just admit you're having fun and that this team is playing good hockey. Yeah, I think you got to lean way more into, like, marketing. I think they can just do themselves a massive favor by, like, realizing it's the entertainment business they're in.
The other piece of the F word that you had here was Edmonton's Second Chance Saloon and how fan culture shapes the sport. And I'm curious, is there something going on at Edmonton that I'm not aware of that I should be?
I kind of probably messed up the syntax there, and that wasn't meant to be as confusing as it read. But I guess I was referring to the Corey Perry signing. So obviously, like, Corey Perry's been out of a job for the last few months after an unknown incident, and
that did not involve a player's family.
Yeah. But and we're not saying it's a low bar, but, like, if you get fired by the Chicago Blackhawks, but yeah, like, obviously Edmonton gave a second chance to bare minimum faked a vaccine card at Van de Kane. Like, he at least did that, we know. Like, I don't know what happened. You don't know what happened. We don't know. Like, that hasn't been released into the public domain. We don't know if it's that bad. The optics aren't good. Obviously, and I guess I just really hope this is another case of an athlete getting to write their redemption story playing their sport. Like, whatever you do off the ice, you can't redeem yourselves on the ice for that. So I hope it's just not another case of that happening.
Yeah, so I had not heard that he had signed in Edmonton, though, as I'm now reading, that happened, like, this afternoon, this evening, as we're recording. Like, It's not an actual deal. It's just been announced that it's a deal. Am I correct in understanding? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Edmonton does Edmonton things. They always have. But it's hard to knock an organization who turned things around and is continuing to play well getting a player who technically has pedigree and potentially a whole lot of baggage along with it. And I shouldn't say potentially. Like, there's baggage. We're just not entirely sure what's inside. And that could be the problem, is there's something in the bags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, well, good luck, Edmonton. I hope you just get close to the playoffs and miss out. Although they're like one of the hottest teams right now. Like, I just know Oilers won
sadly
10 straight. Third in the Pacific. Like, that is a playoff team right there. So they'd have to lose quite a few to not make the playoffs. But yeah, you think about hot teams. Canucks, 8-1-1 in last 10. The Oilers, 10-0. If you go to the Central, Winnipeg, 9-1-0. Like, 3 Canadian teams right now are just wicked hot.
Yeah. Melting the snow up here.
That's the reason why it's starting to clear here in Vancouver. I can't speak for Edmonton, though. They're in snow until pretty much July. Speaking of July, it's near the end of the hockey season. In fact, it is. And, well, this episode has reached the point where our July is fast approaching because we are at the end of a show. But as we do at the end of every show, we ask for you to take part in the conversation with us. You can do so by joining C4 Discord, discord.io/C4 podcast, or you can shout out to us in the void of Twitter, X, whatever the heck it's called, at the C4 podcast, or on Threads at the real C4 podcast. Why real? Because I could not for the life of me get the C4 podcast there. And the account itself does not exist on Threads, nor does it exist, it seems, on Instagram the way I'd want to. The long story short, at the real C4 podcast on Threads. If you want to support the show, helps keep the lights on, and again, throw a few bucks our way, you can do so by going to support.c4podcast.com, which will then forward to a site called Buy Me a Coffee, or as Anna and I like to call it,
Buy me a pint.
Where you can actually throw some money towards a pint or two on a one-off basis, or alternatively, you can commit to supporting the show either on a monthly or annual basis. And in doing so, again, the money you give us goes directly in the costs that we incur to simply record, to publish, and then to host the site. We don't break even. We're below that. And I'd also just want to reinforce, all the ads you might hear at the start of the show or at the end have nothing to do with us. We would like for it to go away, and maybe at some point we'll be in the position that we can make them stop. But until then, we don't support any of the things ish. I say ish because there could be some like good causes. Maybe we might support those. I won't disparage a good cause or a charity or something like that, because they just happen to, buy an ad spot through our host that throws it on our show. But Anna, got any final words of wisdom for any of our listeners this week?
I don't really. No, I don't really have anything. I did have a cool experience of the weekend where I got talking to someone who was keen on hockey podcasts and trying to listen to a few, and went to look up our show and realized they were already subscribed. They were like, "Oh, that's you." So that was cool. So shout out Cara from Chilliwack.
Did was it like, oh yeah, the C4 podcast, really cynical?
There was no qualitative comment offered. So, but yeah, I did get a few new subscribers on the weekend. So.
Cool. And then they listened to this week's episode, heard my voice, and they're like, unsubscribe. That guy knows nothing. That's fine. Got some good segues, though. Yeah, I it's a cool experience when you connect with someone who happens to listen to the show. I can't say I've had that opportunity with this podcast in a while because I don't venture out all that much, but on like the esports podcast I had occasionally would occur. It was kind of neat. But I did have an experience once when someone said they listened to Canucks podcasts, but they did have one they had to unsubscribe because it was pretty negative. I'm like, oh, which one was that? I was like, C4 or something. I'm like, oh, cool. Anyhow, I didn't say anything. And finally someone goes and tells them, hey, you do realize that guy like hosts that podcast you talked so poorly of. And so they came back to try to like apologize. I'm like, no, it's okay. I mean, if you didn't like the show and you unsubscribe, I'm not upset. I would prefer that you listen to what you enjoy. And if we're not it, that's okay. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was awkward. Oh man. Wow. Final words of wisdom for me. Don't eat the yellow snow. Just don't. In fact, if the snow has color, don't eat it. Mm-hmm. Or also consider that what you see as the snow doesn't necessarily mean there isn't other things in there. Just don't eat snow.
Yeah.
the facial expressions I get from you are sometimes priceless. Too bad our listeners can't see them as they come through the headset that they're wearing, or earbuds, or speakers, or car radio, or whatever the heck it is that they listen to our podcast on. But on behalf of myself, Chris at Lightforce on the social medias, Anna at 84603 on the social medias, I'm going to sign off this episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast with We Out.